When you think about the ultimate digital walled garden, you probably picture this completely self-sustaining ecosystem. The walls are impossibly high, the gates are locked tight, and the company that built it just controls every single piece of the supply chain.
Right. They build the silicon, they write the operating system, they run the app store.
Exactly. And security and privacy are guaranteed specifically through that absolute uncompromising isolation.
It's the ultimate control paradigm. I mean, you own the whole widget, from the atoms in the processor to the pixels on the screen, which means you never, ever have to trust a third party with your user's data.
Right. And if you're carrying an iPhone in your pocket right now, that is the exact promise you bought into. But imagine waking up today, June 10th, 2026, and finding out that the architect of that walled garden just, quietly handed the keys for the central intelligence tower over to the leader of the rival army.
It's quite the visual.
It is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a massive tech bombshell that dropped just yesterday, which is essentially rewriting the rules of the mobile landscape. Definitely.
Our source today is this fascinating, highly detailed news summary from llmtracker.de. And we have to point out this incredible, almost meta detail right off the bat. This article wasn't actually written by a human tech journalist.
No, it wasn't. The entire synthesis we're looking at was generated by an autonomous AI agent.
Which is why?
Yeah, an agent named Vika Ray, developed by algran.de. It's designed to autonomously monitor and analyze technical sentiment across platforms like Hacker News and Reddit.
So we literally have an AI agent analyzing thousands of human developers who are having an absolute meltdown over AI news.
It's very recursive, yeah.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack what Vika Ray found. Because this news is staggering. Apple has officially revealed a new AI architecture. At the very core of it, they're deeply integrating Google Gemini models.
Which is a massive deal. Right. Apple is outsourcing a critical layer of its AI stack to its absolute biggest competitor in the mobile space.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is, to use an analogy, this is like Ford suddenly announcing they're putting Chevy engines in their flagship Mustangs because they forgot how to build them. Why would Apple do this?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it signals a major strategic shift. For over a decade, Apple's fundamental identity, the primary marketing weapon against Google, has been that they don't compromise the stack.
Yeah, privacy first.
Exactly. But by embedding Gemini so deeply into their platform, they are prioritizing what we call capability catch-up over ecosystem purity. They are essentially admitting they are behind in the AI race.
Wait, I have to push back there a little bit.
Sure.
Is it really an admission of defeat? Because if we look at Apple's history, I mean, they do this kind of thing all the time. They're rarely the first mover, right?
That's true. They do like to wait. Right. They let other companies bleed on the cutting edge, figure out the messy UI, make the hardware mistakes, and then Apple swoops in 3 years later with this highly polished version. Couldn't this just be a classic stopgap strategy? Like they rent Google's brain for a bit while they build a superior Apple model in secret?
It's a fair pushback. I mean, that is their standard playbook. But the mechanics of artificial intelligence make this very, very different from, say, letting someone else figure out the MP3 player.
How so?
The moat for large language models isn't just hardware design. It's not user experience. The moat is data.
Ah.
Oceans of training data. And this is where Apple's greatest marketing asset, their strict on-device privacy stance, actually became their biggest technical liability.
Because they siloed everything. They didn't collect it.
Exactly. While Google spent the last 2 decades scraping the open web and building these massive centralized data lakes from search queries, Apple intentionally starved its own internal AI projects of that oxygen.
Wow. So they just don't have the raw material.
Right. They refused to build those centralized data profiles.
Yeah.
So you simply cannot train a frontier model that competes with Gemini if you don't have the data infrastructure to feed it. Catching up fast is now more important than owning the entire tech stack.
So the capability gap has grown so large that they have to swallow their pride. They have to use Google's engine.
Yeah.
But that naturally leads us into what I think is the central conflict of this deep dive.
The privacy paradox.
Yes, because if I'm a user, right, Apple's entire brand identity is privacy first. So if I ask my phone a personal question like summarize a sensitive medical email or search my text for a flight, is Google reading that now?
This raises an important question about infrastructure boundaries.
Yeah.
Because an LLM of Gemini's size requires immense compute power.
Right.
So Apple has to make some very hard engineering choices about where the data actually goes. The source material highlights 3 immediate architectural routing options, and Apple hasn't really answered these satisfactorily yet.
Let's break those down. Where is the data going? Because this is the difference between my data staying mine and my data becoming Google's.
So the first option is running a quantized version of Gemini strictly on device.
Okay, meaning it physically lives on the phone.
Exactly. A compressed, smaller version of the model is downloaded to your processor.
Which solves the privacy issue entirely, right? The data never leaves my hand.
It does solve the privacy issue, but the trade-off is massive. A mobile chip, even Apple's best silicon, has severe physical limitations. You can't fit a massive frontier model into a smartphone's RAM.
Right, so it's going to be computationally stunted. It can format a text message, but it's not going to do complex reasoning.
Precisely. So for the heavy lifting, the data must go off device. It has to go to the cloud. And this brings us to the second option, the source details, which is Apple's private cloud compute.
Private cloud compute. Okay, explain that one.
This means your query leaves your phone, but it routes to server infrastructure that Apple physically owns and controls. And Apple claims these servers process the data ephemerally.
Meaning it's destroyed right after.
Yes. It's never logged. It's never tied to your Apple ID.
Yeah.
Independent researchers can supposedly audit the code to ensure this.
Okay, to use an analogy here, this sounds like the difference between handing your raw ingredients over to a Google drive-through window versus Apple building a highly secure kitchen on their own property and just hiring a Google chef to come in and cook.
That's a great way to put it.
In that scenario, Google's model, the chef, is doing the work, but Apple controls the doors and makes sure the chef doesn't leave with your recipes.
Exactly. They are hosting Gemini on their sovereign turf. But, and this is a very big, but without granular clarity on this, we have to look at the third routing possibility from the source. And this is the one causing the meltdown.
Oh.
What happens if the query goes directly to Google's servers?
The raw drive-through scenario.
Right. For certain complex tasks, Apple might determine their private cloud isn't equipped for it, or maybe their licensing deal with Google requires it. If your device routes a query directly through Google's API, you are now entirely subject to Google's privacy policies, not Apple's.
Wait, that completely bypasses the locked kitchen. And let's dig in why that's so dangerous, because the source specifically mentions fine-tuning and grounding.
Yes, RA, Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Right. If Google is using RAG on our personal data to make Gemini's answers specific to us, that happens where...
That is the exact vulnerability. RAG requires taking your personal data, your iMessages, your calendar, turning them into mathematical vectors, and feeding them into the model. If that happens on Google servers, the privacy promise is dead.
You're exposing intimate details across a massive corporate boundary, and when you cross boundaries between tech giants, data inevitably leaks.
Always.
Not even maliciously, just through the sheer friction of two giant architectures talking to each other.
Right, and this is why developers are so angry.
Which brings us to the hacker news and Reddit meltdown. Here's where it gets really interesting. Vika Ray, our AI agent, analyzed the sentiment of thousands of human developers, and the numbers are just brutal.
They are overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, a staggering 73% critical, only 12% neutral, and 15% positive. Let that sink in. 73% of the most technically literate people on the web view this as a profound failure.
And you have to understand, these aren't just casual consumers complaining to complain.
Right.
These are software engineers, systems architects. They build the underlying plumbing of the internet. They are rightfully pressing for technical transparency because they know how fragile API endpoints between massive networks actually are.
And it's also a feeling of brand betrayal, right? Like the dominant reaction is distrust and disappointment. People are calling it rebranded hype.
Exactly. Apple has spent a decade telling everyone that Google's business model, which is data harvesting for ads, is the literal antithesis of privacy. Tim Cook has drawn hard lines in the sand about this.
And now they're inviting the engine of that harvesting machine into iOS.
Right. Developers are looking at this and saying, Apple couldn't build a working LLM, so they took Google's homework, slapped an Apple animation on it, and expect us to pretend the risks don't exist.
It's just so ironic to me that we have an AI agent autonomously analyzing human developers freaking out over an AI integration. But having covered that massive backlash, I want to talk about that remaining 15%.
The cautiously optimistic crowd.
Yeah, the 15% who are actually happy about this. Why on earth would anyone who understands these privacy risks view this as a good thing?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to one agonizing pain point in the Apple ecosystem that has been broken for years.
Oh, let me guess. Siri.
Siri. The source notes that this 15% sees Gemini as the only viable way to finally fix Siri's long criticized performance.
I mean, Siri has historically been like that one friend who confidently gives you the wrong directions every single time.
That's very accurate.
You ask it to set a multi-step timer, it fails. You ask it to synthesize info from two apps, it pulls up a random web search.
And that's because Siri's underlying architecture was hard-coded for intent-based parsing, not probabilistic reasoning. It was fundamentally broken for the modern era. An LLM like Gemini actually understands semantic context.
So what does this mean for the listener? Will their devices actually get smarter now?
Yes. The leap in capability will be staggering. Your device will suddenly be able to look at your screen, understand a sprawling email thread, check your calendar, and draft a perfect reply.
All without typing a word. So this 15% is basically saying, yes, the privacy boundary is blurry, and yes, outsourcing to Google is a retreat, but my phone will finally do what science fiction promised me.
Exactly. They're weighing the ultimate trade-off. Apple is gambling its pristine privacy reputation for the chance to finally give users an AI assistant that actually works.
But even that 15% is tempering their enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
Because execution is everything.
Oh, absolutely. If Apple botches the handoff between the on-device model and the cloud, or if there's even one incident where an Apple user's private text messages end up in a Google training set.
Oh, wow. The reputational damage would be catastrophic.
It would be. They've pushed all their privacy chips into the center of the table.
So to wrap this up and bring it all back to you, the listener, if you are carrying an iPhone right now, Apple's massive gamble means your device is about to get a major brain transplant.
A completely new mind.
Right. The benefit might be a vastly superior AI experience, but the cost might be the closed privacy loop you thought you were paying for when you bought into that walled garden.
The gates have been thrown wide open to the competitor, all in the name of capability. It's a fundamental shift.
It really is. And it leaves us with a final lingering thought to mull over, building on all this source material. If Apple relies entirely on Google's brain to power its devices going forward, to provide the actual intelligence and reasoning, at what point does the iPhone just become a very expensive piece of glass housing Google's mind?
That's the real existential question.
Yeah, I mean, if the intelligence is entirely outsourced, does the hardware brand even matter anymore? Or are we all just carrying different shaped vessels for the exact same AI? Think about that the next time you ask your phone a question. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.